Recording in progress.
Can we get a roll call?
Chairman Waggy.
Here.
Alderwoman Tice. Here. Alderman Gould.
Here.
Alderman Erger.
Here. Great. Move
Members
on
are
to
present.
agenda approval. Any changes? Seeing none, we'll approve by acclamation. Citizen comment?
None at this time.
Okay. Moving the report of committee chair and alderman. The only thing I have is, hey, Dan, on Mary Kay Court, you know, the experiment that we're doing over there in the island. So some of the residents have been reaching out. They are appreciative of that it's better, but they think it could possibly be even better. I think that's probably a conversation we need to tee up maybe for the spring, either if it's a rim of concrete or get their input. I think they are potentially doing a petition to like do more, which is, I don't think is necessary, but that's okay too. So just a heads up that we'll probably be talking about that a little bit more in the future. Alderman Parker Tice?
Yeah, sorry. I've had two different people reach out to me about the change of walk pattern as children go to the new McGrath. They're walking more on White Avenue across from the football field. So it's that house that didn't want the sidewalk and now wants to put the sidewalk in. And so there are just lots and lots of kids from the 7:45 to 8 o'clock hour that are on that side, and their kids on little bikes. And they've been asking if there's any ability to put a sidewalk in. So I know there's a lot to that, but I just wanted to highlight here that I've had several requests, and I personally notice that families are walking in the street to get to McGrath. And I know that's not a quick solution.
All right. Alderman Gould?
No report.
Alderman Erger?
No report.
All right. We'll move into department reports, Public Works.
Signal equipment base. And then once that's all completed, then you'd have power and the complete traffic signal assembly. What we're hoping for is it should have already shipped out and been here. I need to confirm that since Brian with Navigate's out. And then we're scheduled for November 12th to do testing with the county. Assuming that that passes with the county, then Union Pacific Railroad would come in. And starting them on so for training the signal, thumbs come down, stop traffic, lights red, everybody stops, train pushes out of the intersection, everything goes back on. The other thing with Russell is 80 train from Russell, we look at the 12-inch purple. That's that house there at the corner of Collier and Russell. And I spoke with the resident. She liked the 12-inch over the 6-inch idea. There is a 12-inch that's already just to the east of there at that strip mall, so it'd be mirroring that instead of a 6-inch. The only thing she asked, which I sent back to the design team, was if you were to go with 12, what would the slopes be? I know with a 6-inch you can get 3-to-1. Does a 12-inch, how does that make it better? Is it a lot better, or is it just slightly better than 3-to-1? So we'll find that out.
Could I ask a question about
Yeah.
that? So I've noticed, and this may be a little bit of a Whitney question, I've noticed as houses are turning over, there are some railings that are going up along, I've noticed them mainly along driveways where there's a steep drop. There are quite a few on White Avenue on the east side that I've noticed go up. So if it's 12 inches from a yard, I guess if it's in someone's yard, would that require some sort of a safety railing?
I know the
Or
12 does.
no? Okay, she's shaking no.
Was it 30-something, 34?
From a walking path or drive out, then that requires a safety barrier.
Okay, great, thank you. I just didn't want us to put something in someone's yard that then would require them to put a safety railing, so, great.
Yeah, we looked at that, plus we wanted it as short as possible just because of the no rise, you know. The house isn't in the floodplain, but the street is. So, and part of that sidewalk and edge is in that same bubble too. So we didn't want to do anything too out of the box on that. Switching gears, the FEMA cap.
You don't need any action on the board, but if the resident is agreeable to it, we can move forward with it?
Right,
Is
it would
that-
be a change order to Gershenson, and I know I spoke with the designers, and they said that they would, you know, absorb some of that cost because they said, well, it wasn't in the plans,
Yeah.
you know, and I know we talked about topo, so they were agreeable to that too.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Yep, and then FEMA capital, you know, we've been using the sweeper. It had an engine code after Brentwood days, wouldn't luck have it, so it had to go back to the dealership. It was something to do with, it's got dual steer, and it was the accelerators competing against one another. I don't exactly understand it. There's an electrical modulator, I think he said, so one of them got replaced. Everything's working fine. I know we started Monday, and then we swept Monday, Tuesday. We got through most of a normal Tuesday route. We're just trying to see, it's a different capacity and a different operating system with the sweeper. So we're trying to see, can we do the same streets to the level we used to, or do we need to modify that list? So I said, let's go through it a few cycles, then bring it back. If it needs to change, we ask for a change. So that
So
takes,
Dan, as we're figuring it out, so the current schedule that's on the website is what we'll execute until we,
that's what we're
decide-
trying to do now. So we did like a normal Tuesday, we got done in a Tuesday fashion. So I said, we'll see what you can do. Like, we gave the drivers the list, it's in the cab, and it's like, just go through the list of Monday, Tuesday, you know, so on and so forth. And I said, if you think of something better because trash or recycling or whatever's on the street, then by all means, let us know and we'll make modifications.
yeah, I came by my house today. It's cool to see.
Yep. And then the other big project that's FEMA would be the roof on City Hall, and I know that that's pushed back into November/December. But I know that the roofers they said something about a shingle shortage that caused them, I guess, some delays on other projects, but they wouldn't be short on shingles here, and then some of it's flat roof anyways. So I said, well, why not do the flat roof if you're waiting for shingles? So we have to complete that as close to the end of the year because I know the FEMA deadline's February of 2025. 2818 Breckenridge Industrial, that's the former Bowser House. If you go out there, all you're gonna see is dirt and some seed and straw. So everything's hauled away. We're just waiting on one last pay application from the contractor to close it out, and that job is done. Lewis Avenue, we were out there today. We poured concrete. Tomorrow we'll add asphalt. This is it's about in the middle of the road, like just past the Circle K's driveway. So there was a sinkhole, and it was due to the lateral failing plus MSD's trunk line failing. So both of those have been fixed. We just need to patch the street, and we're in the process of doing that. Stormwater bid package 1. I spoke with Gonzalez. Actually, I texted back and forth with them. They did receive MSD comments. They made changes. The last thing they said they're waiting on is the title report. They have right-of-way lines drawn there, and they want the title report to confirm what they've drawn is accurate. So, So-
Can you
yeah.
remind everybody what's included in bid package 1?
uh,
I think there were,
six
were there 4
projects,
projects? Oh,
but I
6.
don't have them memorized. I know that there were like 2 that were private, public combination, and the other 4 were strictly.
Public,
Yep.
okay.
You can always, in the weekly.
That'd be great. Yeah, I thought, the ones that I thought were the public ones, but I couldn't remember what the other 2 were. So there were 2 combo.
Yeah, one of the combos I know is,
Oh, right, right.
And the other one is 2217 Park Ridge, if that's the right number.
Okay.
it was part.
Yeah.
Then, I don't want to, so, yesterday, it was approved, so you can kind of disregard what's written there, but basically, the contractors moved up the paving. It was supposed to be Monday, actually gonna do the asphalt tomorrow. So what that means is they'll be able to mill and overlay the area of Mary going west to east to try to move that water, but then more importantly, restore the street properly where the water line disturbed it on Mary. And I know later on this week, it'll be Florence and the rest of the streets in that vicinity. So I know they wanted to get Mary done in particular with Halloween and rain coming up. They said they wanted to get rid of that 2-inch drop that's where the asphalt and concrete have that vertical difference. So St. Louis Milling and Paving is the company you'll see starting tomorrow around 7 a.m. And then I plan on meeting with them around 9 just to go over that again. 2832 Manderley Drive, that's the retaining wall that's leaning, and that's the retaining wall that's in a pathway between Hilldale and Manderley. So I submitted it to another consultant that does design build to see what they could think of a range, so we can kind of drill down and get a better idea for the budget. It's in the 25 draft budget, but I wanted to try to get some ideas so we could write an RFP and actually get this thing done at the beginning of the year.
Dana, is part of the problem with that cost, is it the actual removal of the old material?
It's the space. I mean, you've got
So
like
tight.
not much bigger than this, you know, and you're trying to get equipment in there, and the equipment's way too heavy for what that wall's doing right now. That's just a cinder block wall.
Yeah,
I have no idea. I bet it's not keyed into anything. It's probably just,
yeah. Because I would
And-
think the demo work is not gonna require a ton, but,
yeah, what they wanted to do was somehow brace it and then break each block free to take it down in a layer, because he's like, anything mechanical that vibrates is probably gonna flop the whole thing over. It's gonna hit the garage that's
Okay.
next to it.
yeah, that's,
And
it's
then
a
you gotta be
challenge.
cognizant of the driveway that's at a higher elevation, just to the, whatever it be, north or so.
Yeah, okay,
It's a terrible area to try to do work. Because it said, well, even if you could leave it and encapsulate it, I'd be willing to think of that, you know, if you could somehow pin something along there and just concrete it together. If that's easier than removal, I don't know. Switching gears, the library space, we did have a special meeting on October 1st. There was no further action, but I know from the meeting, it's basically, there's gonna be no restaurant or food service down there. We wanted to, I guess, vet out with the Brentwood School District if they needed to rent space. I don't know where they are in that process. I'm sure they'll come back to us.
yeah, I mean, I had a conversation with the president of the school board, who was very excited about the opportunity and thought the timing of it was perfectly aligned with kind of where they
Out
are.
there.
So they weren't concerned that it was gonna be a couple of years for the library to get out, and then, you know, so it seemed like that might be a favorable thing for them as well, so,
Okay.
anecdotally speaking.
Yeah, and the only other thing that's not on the report that was brought to our attention today was 8611 Manchester. It would be on the north side of Manchester, just east of Dorothy. The runoff that can occur from our gravel parking lot, from our parking lot going east, can get on that person's driveway. I did look, we do have some landscape timbers that we have some in stock. You know, there's landscape timber along the edge going from the gate to that property north. Those are pinned down, but there's none going from the gate towards Manchester Road near the inlet. So that would take roughly 70 feet when I wheeled it off. We've got 5, those are 6-inch by 6-inch by 8 feet long. So you'd probably need at least another 4 or 5 timbers just so you have them in reserve in addition to the ones we have. And those are $35 a piece at Home Depot. And then the spikes, we have some of the spikes still to pin those down. Even if we had to buy some, it's roughly $30 for a group of 16, and then we just weld a nut on the end of them. So all in, you're talking maybe $200 to $300 worth of material if we wanted to put something basically between our eastern edge and his western property edge. There's already straw wattles that are pinned down, but this would add another layer of protection to keep debris, you know, from washing over.
Yeah, I noticed the straw wattles. It looks like they may not really do a whole lot, because
Yeah.
water can get under them pretty easily or
Yeah.
over them. I'm sure it helps slow down water coming off, but I went there today, and it actually looks like a majority of it is right where the gate is. It pulls up and then gets onto the, once it starts getting on there, it just kind of runs all the way down. So,
And by the gate, there's nothing that's
Right.
currently there
Right.
except for the straw.
and just so the committee's aware, what Dan and I spoke about is we are obviously aware that we can't do any major grading or anything like that, but we certainly put temporary barriers to direct the water and keep it on our property, and it doesn't violate any issues. So, so that's why I asked Dan about it today, and he checked inventory. And now those, the ones that we have in inventory, is it possible to even get those down before the rain comes and see how it, if we do it right by the gate and
We could add a
feather
few
it
more,
out?
because there's 5 of them. I think 3 of them had holes already pre-drilled. We just have to drill the other 2. And like I said, I believe we still have some spikes left over. If we have enough, we could try to pin them down.
And when you do that, will you just like take a spade and just make sure that there's a level surface so that there's not a cavity for it to go under?
Yeah, we'll have to, is what I thought, or like a, pick or mattock and just like kind of scrape it just to cut the grass away to leave dirt.
Yeah.
And then that way it sits more level.
Flush.
Yeah, flush.
Yeah. Okay. Do you need any motion from this
No,
committee?
like I said, we've got it, 5 of these are sitting there in the shop in the back. I would need a few more just to kind of close the gap, but I can start where the last ones end, which is roughly north of the gate, and just continue, from the gate out towards Manchester.
Yeah, and I noticed that
That would buy you 40 feet.
one of the wattles that had been installed looks like it might block the natural flow and push it like over to his drive. Maybe when we do that, we should look at
Might need to be picked up.
just to the south of the inlet. We might need to open that wattle up so that it continues to go into the inlet and not around and back in.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, before we purchase any more, I would be a proponent of installing the ones we have and then seeing how it goes. But
Sounds good. Any other questions for Dan? Okay. Thanks, Dan.
Thanks.
All right, Parks and Rec.
Just one thing on our report, and then one thing I forgot and wanted to ask a quick question about. But the first one is Brentwood Park restroom update. If you guys remember, in last February, during that really cold snap that we had some pipes burst in the new event pavilion. Obviously, we were unhappy with that, so we talked to the engineers, and basically they came up with a new solution. And so Vogel Heating and Cooling was on site starting yesterday to make those corrections and make those installations. So they should have that done next couple weeks. And again, since this was a design defect, that is something that the engineer and Christner are covering the cost for. So there's that. And then I meant to go back and look at the video today, and I did not, so I apologize. I know when we talked about the beer garden last meeting, we said no to a permanent structure. Did we talk about the desire maybe of having a temporary structure down? Is that something we want to look at, or we just want to cut it for now and wait? So only reason I ask is that we do have an interested vendor who continues to ask about if that's something the city's interested in.
Yeah, Nancy?
I think as the crush that came to that playground in the first couple months has died down, I think there probably is room for us to think about doing other things that would draw people to Brentwood and to Brentwood Park. I think doing something with a temporary kind of structure might make some sense. So I'll just.
If there's interest, what I could do is I could put together an RFP for next month, bring that back for discussion, and if we're comfortable, then we can move forward with advertising it, and then we'd have further discussion once we get if we get any responses back. So
That seems reasonable to me, but I'm just one voice.
Yeah, Jeff?
yeah, I don't disagree. I mean, I think what I recall, we didn't have any interest as a board or committee for the city to invest in a lot of things,
Yes.
building wise, structure, all of that. If there are partnerships and we want to test something out that's temporary, then, I mean, I'd love to hear more about it. I'm not going to say no. I am, I mean, the temporary lots do help significantly. You know, I think that anything that's positioned near the pavilion, that's going to fill up that lot again. I think we've all kind of talked about whether or not we want to spend $11,000 per parking space for a new parking lot. So I'd hesitate to put new programming and activity in there that then all of a sudden brings a ton of cars, and then we're forced to do something with parking again. But if it's about encouraging people to park in the temporary lots and walking and biking and things like that, I think it'd be interesting.
Eric, do you think, I mean, even though it's temporary structure, but like power and water would have to be run somewhere, are you still thinking on that, across the path there?
The things that I've seen as far as you look at temporary are all self-contained, water self-contained, power self-contained, whether it's a temporary structure, and the obvious one I've seen is more like a shipping container, or if you even do like a truck, like Schlafly has a alcohol truck. Is that something they'd be interested in bringing out every Friday, Saturday, Sunday from set times? That's, I think, the two main options, but both of those are self-contained.
Sounds like consensus is we'd love to hear more.
Great.
Maybe start that RFP.
I'll bring that back next month.
On the bathroom repair, so it says it's going to take 2 weeks. Will that be done before the holiday party?
It better be, yes.
Because it seems like that would be the worst time to have half of the bathrooms closed.
No, it is supposed to be done well before then.
Which I believe is the 12th or
7th,
7th.
yes.
Okay. Okay. All right. Thanks, Eric. Planning and development? Oh, sorry, Jeff.
I'm sorry, before we move on from Eric, I did go down, is the construction on the eroding areas of Brentwood Park, is that complete now? It looks like we're starting to get good grass growing up and.
The construction's done. They're now in the maintenance of making sure that grass comes in. So, well, they put down 2 things. They put down regular seed, and then they put down a cover crop. I believe it's a winter wheat, so that would come up pretty quickly to give us at least something until the rest of the seed comes in. So Christensen is still watering that on a regular basis, making sure that it
I was surprised that with all the dry weather, it's already growing pretty
and that's the
decently.
cover crop. I mean, if you remember different parts of Brentwood Park, it greened up really quickly and then kind of went away, and that's just that cover crop to kind of get that established, get some roots in there, help if there's any sort of water event, but then to kind of hold it until the grass seed actually comes through.
Okay, great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. Hey, Whitney.
Okay. So the monthly reports for September are attached. There were 244 new building permits and 696 inspections for the month of September. And code enforcement had 43 new cases and 49 inspections. I just ran the report for October to today, and there were 198 new permits and 912 inspections. And code enforcement had 10 new cases and 11 inspections. Our code enforcement officer has been assisting in some of the inspections with some of the larger code enforcement property maintenance issues. The Planning and Zoning Commission met and reviewed the proposal for 350 through 370 Hanley Industrial Court. It's a continuation of the Carboline, different building but similar concept. That did have to go for a variance, and that was approved at the October 24th Board of Adjustment meeting, so it will go back to the Planning and Zoning Commission on November 13th for review and then recommendation to the Board of Aldermen. They also reviewed a text amendment to allow for fences on a corner lot, and that received approval, so that will be on the November 4th Board of Aldermen public hearing, for a public hearing. Let's see, the Architectural Review Board met on October 17th and approved 2 projects, and we have applications for the October 17th. We have applications for the November 21st meeting as well. Now we're past the budget, we are interested in 2025 to look at our whole business license section of the code. I'm been working with Stephanie Carr, getting her comments. I haven't gotten those yet, but we will look to schedule that for the Ways and Means Committee to update our business license sections for more modern types of businesses and how they're categorized. So, and then we are in the winter. In the winter, we will look to issue an RFP for our contract for high grass and weeds. The current contract was from 2015. So we need updated information and yeah, so we'll look to be doing that too.
We have 2 vendors that we can use on that, right? Just in case one is incapable or not able to do it?
I only know of one, or we call on Public Works or Parks to assist. So.
On the day spa, is that a text amendment just to allow that day spa, or is there a plan you think to do some reclassification of that whole building in the future?
It's just to allow for the day spa in the light industrial district. We did discuss the possibility of rezoning that to PD, but that would create some nonconformities on some other uses that they don't want to worry about.
Okay.
So it's just allowing the day spa's uses in the light industrial district.
I'll say that building looks really great. I mean, they've done a good job of cleaning it up, and you can tell it's changing. So that's good. Any other questions, Whitney? Okay, thanks, Whitney. And then SUSCOM, I don't think we have anything.
No report.
Okay. All right, we'll go into old business, Resolution 1524.
So all I did was kind of move everything over from the Board of Aldermen meeting. Obviously, we have completed the master plan. It is a rather large document. I think I'm very happy with it. We do have Scott Rundy here from SWT who can answer questions. He and I can answer questions that you guys have. But we are looking to get this approved in the near future.
Yeah, Scott, I don't think we need to go through the same presentation again.
Yeah.
No, not at all. I had several questions that I wanted to just kind of make sure I knew where we stood with it. Is on the projects, there's several projects in here that have multiple options. Some of the projects that have multiple options, it's difficult to kind of parse out, like, okay, what's really the difference here? And from a master plan standpoint, I mean, how do we prioritize, how do we go about that, right? You know, if there's so many options in here, how does that?
So, and Scott, you can help me with this one, but in my mind is that when you take something like the sports complex, that's one that has multiple options, right? That is such a complex issue that to be able to say that one is better than the other is probably, we can't say that this time because the master plan hasn't gone that far in depth. That's why I think one of the recommendations of the master plan is then to do a more intense study of that whole area to figure out if one or those others are a better or more feasible opportunity. We could, I mean, if the board wants, we could just say we'd rather go with one option and not have to go through that point, and at which point we could have that discussion with Scott and bring back what we think is most feasible, or if the committee feels like in that instance, in particular, like we think option one is the best option. While we understand that we could do something else, we really think having the ball fields down there is the best way to go. We can then take the other options out in the master plan.
Well, I mean, even like what started to be overly complicated to me was like things like Memorial Park. I really was struggling to figure out what the difference was in several of those options. And some of them are just like, oh, well, this one has a small little connector with a bridge over a creek that doesn't there to get access to a pavilion. So I wasn't really sure why we would, for a project, now I understand the sports complexes, there's several different ways that we could go about it. And maybe at that point, if we took up a project like that, we'd have a lot more community involvement about, okay, what does the community need for the sports complex, as opposed to pick one and go with it. Same thing with like the community center. There seem to be a lot of options that were just variations on similar thoughts. And I didn't know how valuable it was to have a master plan with so many options.
I think the two that I think bear the multiple options are probably the sports complex and the rec center. And primarily the sports complexes is that is an issue we've been dealing with, and we think we have better water flow through that area thanks to Brentwood Bound, but obviously we still flood down there when Brentwood Bound doesn't. Secondarily, if it's going to continue to be the home location for Brentwood Days and for carnival rides that will always damage those fields, is there a better way of saying, hey, let's move our baseball field over here and just have kind of an open
Yeah,
space?
no, I get that for
So-
sports complex.
And the rec complex is, to be honest, while we do a master plan, they don't go into any sort of heavy engineering. So while we talk about a secondary level, while we talk about ability to expand in different areas, we don't have any of the geotech reports from any updated ones. I remember when we did the last renovation, there was questions about whether or not we could put a second level, but we didn't go through that. The board at that time said, no, we're not even going to talk about that anyway. We just want to redo what we have. So I think there is multiple options you could do in the recreation complex. The thing of that is, if you really be the honest truth of what's going on, that would be at the very end of the master plan, because we just renovated that in 2015. It is still functioning in a lot of the ways we need it to function. The worst one is storage, and maybe we can take a piece from one of those options and use that space outside of meeting room C to add additional storage or additional room. We could do small things, but to talk about a major reconstruction of that facility is, I think, well down the line. And so I think the best thing about that is, like, here's some options of things you can talk about when you get to the point when you're ready to have that conversation. And again, I think we're ways away from that conversation. The other two I can think off the top of my head, Memorial Park, I would agree with you. I think Scott and I can come down with one result for that, or one option for that, and bring that one forward. And the last, I think, is
Little Hanley.
Hanley Industrial Court, exactly. And I think that is I think because it's such a small space, it was like, what could we do? I think Scott and I come down to one option on that. There's one I really do like, but ultimately, I think ultimately it's one of those things that we didn't get a whole lot of input on because people don't know about it a whole lot. So I think that was part of it, is that while people came and was like, oh yeah, there's that green space. I don't know what to do there. So I think that was part of the help conversation. But we can come down to one option on both Memorial Park and Hanley Park, or Hanley Industrial.
And that kind of gets to how we make our decisions. I was interested in looking at the data when it talked about amenity needs and desires, and then, investment priorities. It was deep in the plan, starting on page 73. And, a lot of these things that are amenity needs or requests, for example, indoor swimming pool. We're not going to put an indoor. So how do we prioritize? If that's heavily prioritized, but we know there's no way the city is ever going to put an indoor swimming pool facility, I feel like we need to filter these lists and remove some things that just aren't really applicable, or they are applicable in the sense that through the park agreement, we have, our residents have access within a 2-mile drive to. So how should we evaluate these things when we've got so many of them on the list? Some of them, several of them, outdoor swimming pool, indoor swimming pool, that are either inaccessible, unattainable, or we already sort of have them accomplished.
Well, I think it's a couple things. In the first, and Scott, just jump in if I'm veering off course. But the first is that question in particular is from the community needs assessment, And I think it is important in a community needs assessment to say, hey, how are your needs being met from the community? And we did see a lot of things. We saw, like you said, the swimming pool, indoor fitness center, things like that. And so what it comes down to is multiple questions. One is, you don't see one of those recommendations on the master plan because obviously we talked to the people who came and we also talked to staff, and we talk about the partnership with Park. And so in that aspect is that while they need it, those needs are still being met. And there are other opportunities for partnerships even around the city if we want to talk about those in the future. So the assessment is just a tool, one of the many tools that the master plan team utilized. They used that, they used the different meetings with residents. They did those 2 touch events at the grand opening of the park and the grand opening of the playground. They also did their own sort of survey at the beginning as we sort of started everything, and all those things are tools that get you to the final result. The master plan per CAPRA, and so you'll start hearing me say this a lot, has to have a lot of these sections in the master plan to say, hey, what did you do for engagement? How did you get to from the start of the plan into the plan and then to your recommendations? So I think the way it's laid out is basically SWT saying, here's what we heard in those different things, and then as you get further on the document into like the 100s, that's when you get into what the actual master plan is. So those are just, again, something we have to have in our master plan for CAPRA, and how it kind of flows through the whole document.
Okay, all right. That makes sense, but yeah, when I looked at like slide 74, and it talks about the investment priorities and the highest ranking investment priorities, majority of them either we already have or we're never going to have. So, it just threw me as a little bit odd to then have these as a high priority rank and then really not be able to fulfill them anywhere.
And again, I think part of it is those priorities are the needs that we heard from the residents who took the community needs assessment survey, right? This was their priority.
Got it.
Doesn't mean that that's overall the plan's priority, and that's what we get into in the plan. Now, part of it, and I think it's one of the things that Scott mentions in the plan, is making sure that we continue to reinforce the partnerships we have so that people understand that we do have those needs being met in different ways. And that, I think that's maybe, I think that is actually spelled out in the plan somewhere.
It's one of the recommendations, kind of reinforcing, does it need to be boosting our partnership with Mark, that the outdoor swimming pool is available, through Maplewood, the indoor swimming pool through Richmond Heights. So making sure that there's awareness that those, kind of amenities are available to residents.
Okay, and the last one, the one that I get residents reaching out to me specifically about is how do we improve our programming for like the leagues that we run, softball leagues and things like that. Are recommendations in this plan, or is that just something that you just keep a tab on and manage? Things like being proactive with making sure that prior to the season, there's a field availabilities or whatever out there, and then if there is a cancellation of some sort, that can happen days in advance as opposed to the day of. We hear a lot about, or I hear a lot about frustrations of, we've been trying to be part of these programs, but we feel like we're being forced to maybe look in other municipalities to take teams because, just the programming hasn't been managed there's some frustration. And it may be a grass is greener, on the other side type of thing, and maybe there's same complications and frustrations somewhere else. But what role does that type of operations have in the master plan?
In particular, I would assume we're continuing talking about the Brentwood Sports Complex in this matter in particular.
Yeah, or ice time or whatever, I'm sure but that's most likely, yes.
The biggest one I hear about is the sports complex. And we've talked about the challenges of the sports complex for the 11 years I've been the director of Parks and Recreation. It's a wonderful facility, but it comes with challenges. We stick 10 to 13 carnival rides on it every year. It is in a floodplain, so every time water comes, it compacts it even more. And we do the best we can to get those fields ready. That is never going to be a great professional looking facility. You go to Shaw Park in Clayton, it's a close one. They have some nice ball fields. They put a 10-foot gate around all their ball fields, lock it up when no one's using it. You can control that a lot more. You can control the people who are coming on and off of those facilities to make sure the grass stays livable and not getting dyed. They also have irrigation. They also don't have water flooding, and they would never put carnival rides on their ball fields. So the frustration goes both ways. We are equally as frustrated with the fact that there are times that we have a tough time getting fields ready. Now, the last in particular, the one you're talking about, Alderman Gould, the email that we received was a frustration about what happened after Brentwood days. We got those fields, and I think that we got that field up, that field in particular. We got the field 3 up on Tuesday and field 2 up that following Monday, so a week after Brentwood days. We haven't had a cancellation since then. We're in a drought. So, I mean, that's part of it.
Yeah.
We get a lot of rain this week, and it's not going to help. And I can go on and on. Our water infiltration rate is 1/16 of an inch every 6 hours. And that's when we did the study back in 2016. So water stays, it doesn't go anywhere. We are doing literally the best we can. If we want good ball fields, the first thing is we don't put carnival rides on there. It's just that simple. Secondarily, we got to make sure water flows better through that park. That is a multi-million-dollar project.
Yep.
So I will tell you that we have 2 guys, or we have a ball field guy right now who is incredibly skilled in what he's done. He's done a really nice job. He started last September. He just finished up his first year. He is extremely happy with the city. He is ecstatic about what the board has done for compensation. And he said, there's no reason I would ever have to look anywhere else.
That's great.
He is my 7th ball field guy in 13 years.
Yeah,
So I hope I get to keep him.
right.
So having expertise also helps.
Yeah.
Again, it's a long answer to say there are some things we're never going to be able to control. I will tell you that I think that our ball field guy in particular will get that in a much better position moving forward. But we're always going to have the same problems.
No,
Until
I
it
think-
stops flooding, until we stop putting carnival rides out there, I'm going to have trouble keeping those things in a great shape.
I think your staffing comment is good. I mean, that's what we can control. right?
Yes,
And
and-
making sure to set a standard for, this is how we should be communicating, this is, in as timely manner as possible. It's important, whether it's for the hockey league or the whatever leagues or anything recreationally that we run and organize. I think maintaining good staff is important. So that's good. Okay, I mean, that's mostly everything I had question-wise.
Any other questions or comments? Nancy?
Oh, I'll just make a comment. With the return to our committee, I spent a lot more time, I actually really reread the comments, and I looked at the rating of amenities that people want, and I just want to compliment you on what the result of this plan looks like. The plans are great. The thing that I saw that ranked high on lists were restrooms, walking trails, then playgrounds, and picnic shelters. So those seem to be the things that are focused on throughout, and I think you did a great job capturing what our residents are looking for. And anecdotally, the question I'm asked most about in Ward 1 is what's going to happen at Mount Calvary Park. And when I tell them what's in this plan, people are ecstatic. And I'm like, it's not going to happen right away. But they love that is going to remain green, and they really like the concept that came out of it. So I just want to compliment the team for everything that you've done to bring this this far.
Well, the thing about a master plan, I've always said, is the master plan is a plan of the community. And when we talked about, when we hired a company, we talked about community engagement and wanted to make sure that we felt the community engagement was going to be well done. And I do think that SWT's done a nice job. Some of their engagement events are great. Would love to have some more attendance during some of those open houses. I think some of the people I've talked to said, well, we already answered this 3 times. So, you know, they knew that their voice had been heard, which is wonderful. And so I think that is a compliment to SWT and what you really want to see in a master plan. So I'm excited about it. As I said, it was a kick to the stomach 10 years ago when the master plan basically said the parks need to be maintained better. And that was just, it's a tough pill to swallow, and it was true. And it's one of the reasons why park maintenance came back under Parks and Recreation. And I think we've made a really deep level commitment to turn that around, and I think that came through in the master plan as well.
The only comment I have, I agree. I think this is a great plan. This is going to be, you know, it's going to embiggen conversations for the next 20 years, right? As you're budgeting, as you're prioritizing, and I like having the different options so that, you know, future boards can decide, you know, what they want to do. I was kind of chagrined, you know, kind of the conversation you had is like, we need pools, you know, and like, don't you know about park? And like, you know, we do have pools. And so I think, you know, I think being aggressive about making sure people understand that, you know, is one of the great takeaways I saw in there. And I think we got to do that somehow. But I can't imagine residents don't realize that, but maybe they don't. I don't know. It's like half a mile away. So it's not hard.
And some of it also too is, I mean, it amazed me when I first got to Brentwood how many people like, oh yeah, we're right here on Brentwood Boulevard, and like, oh, you guys have an ice rink? I mean, it was some of the things I heard early on, and that is an ongoing kind of conversation we have with staff. You know, I will say that obviously we put a whole lot of time and energy and attention into the opening of Brentwood Park. And that's why one of our goals next year is to talk about all of our other facilities, and the rec center will be one of them. And then partnerships will also be one of them. Make sure people understand that as seasons come, that there's places to go. And again, we're always looking for new additional partnerships too, if it's worthwhile. I'd love to find one with tennis courts, because we don't have tennis courts in the city. So if I can find a good partnership where our residents have resident rates to a tennis complex, Kirkwood, Clayton, some of those different places, that's one we're kind of reaching out to right now.
Okay. So I think you're looking for a motion to approve and forward this on to the big board?
Yes.
So moved.
Second.
All right. Any other comments or conversation? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Awesome.
So I do have one quick question, sorry. I do think, as you said, that Alderman Wegge, we can make the one recommendation. What we could do is, if we wanted to, make another appendix F, that kind of walk through some of the iterations of those different plans, Memorial Park in particular, Hanley Industrial Court, if we want to see that in an appendix type situation.
I think the biggest concern that I had was those two, because they were just sort of iterations of each other. They weren't really definitive concepts, right?
Okay.
The sports complex has 3 very different concepts. The community center, there's ratcheting up layers of investment potential, right?
Definitely.
Those are big ideas and distinctly different. The Memorial Park one and the Hanley Park one, I think those could be simplified more, because they're all essentially doing the same thing.
Yep.
But I mean, if the rest of the committee doesn't feel that way and wants to throw all the options in, it doesn't really matter to me that much.
I think just keeping them all in. Again, this is data and ideas that are going to be used for decades. And just, I'd rather have those in there than not, because then future people can decide what they want to do.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, if you look back 10 years, there was no concept of a Brentwood Park, and
Yeah, look at it
you
now.
know, here we are. So the fact that we might be taking out a bridge or doing something now for some future board 15 years from now to make a decision on, we may as well leave it and have the staff and board at that time decide and debate it.
All right. We'll bring this back in November then.
Great. All right. Thank you for coming. All right, Ripple Glass.
So in follow-up with the sustainability and the discussion at the previous meeting, I'll actually get to, I've looked into, there's 3 possible options. So currently, in the commercial districts, trash is part of site plan review and is behind the building to be screened and out of view as much as possible. So just the donation of trash containers is not an allowed use in any of the commercial districts. But we do see it as an amenity that could be in conjunction because of the trash collection, that the Ripple Glass could be placed at the new Public Works building in the Hanley Industrial Court as one option. A second option would be there is the temporary storage container if you wanted to allow it just as on a pilot project or temporary in a commercial district or like at the community center. You'd have to have the property owners. But that does also require that it's viewed as far away from the public right-of-way, kind of screened as much as possible. And that would be reviewed at the Board of Aldermen meeting. And then the third option is if you wanted it to be on a more permanent basis in the commercial corridors, then we could work on a text amendment that would allow these as well as the clothing bins that we've been following up as illegal to allow them, but there would be certain site specifics and they would have to get approval for that. So it's kind of how y'all want to take this at this point.
Waiting, I think it was before your time, but we talked about those donation bins for about 1.5 years. I feel like we could not figure out how to do it back in the day. So it's probably worth trying to figure that out now. Because now that we've been talking about them, I see them all over town now.
Yeah,
I'm noticing
and so
them.
we follow up with the property owners and they're like, yeah, they get dropped off at 4 a.m. and then we have to pay to have them moved. Because so we're also following up with as much as we can with those tenants or with those companies that they're advertising for, because they're usually within the setback and, take up parking spaces, that kind of thing.
So the businesses don't even want them there? They just show up?
They just kind of get dropped. That's the latest one. I talked at Brentwood Square. I let them know that one was dropped off, and they were like they just drop them off, and now we have to spend money to get rid of them. So I'm like, well, yeah. Others are like, oh, well, we have a contract. I'm like, well, you never got approval from the city, so. And
What's the committee think? Yeah, Nancy?
Well, I think the Ripple Glass is probably worth trying for the city. And it seems to me a good place to try it would be the new Public Works building. It's not right up near homes, which I think the one near the community center is closer to residential. And the building, we own the building, and it's, other than some storage, I'm not really sure. I'm looking out at Dan and Eric, but I don't really think we have a great use for it at the moment. So it seems a logical place to put it, try it, and see what the feedback is from the community and the use from the community.
Yeah, as far as storage, I don't think we're planning on doing anything outside in that facility right now, just because we don't have the cameras or gates or anything there. If we do anything, it'll be inside. So giving some of that exterior space for Ripple Glass, I don't think would be an issue at all.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. And if you look at where the existing ones are, because the Webster one is like right next to Brentwood. I mean, you can almost see it from Brentwood. And then you've got Maplewood, so that's kind of a good third location. And then Richmond Heights maybe can start using it, and maybe they'll, I don't know. It seems like a great program. It's going to save us money.
I did talk, as a side note, I did talk to the planning director in Webster, and he's like, yeah, I don't know how that got approved and is being removed, so.
No. Okay.
Well, I mean, I did just visit it. I went there today and took a look at it. And I mean, it does take up like you said, takes up a lot of parking spaces. And I assumed maybe they just didn't need those parking spaces. But, I agree. If we're going to have them at all, I think in the industrial court seems logical. It's also very close to Total Wine and More and all these other places, so maybe people can make their trip and drop off their empties and go get whatever more they want. But I agree. I think that would be a good trial there. Does it cost us to be part of the program at all, or do they just,
It does not.
so we just have to grant approval for them to drop it?
Yep, we just have to give them a location. They bring out the dumpster. Once it gets full, they take that dumpster, bring back a new one, an empty one. So, and they actually provide bags for residents as well that they can put their glass in to then take to the site. In fact, they're going to give us 100 bags here in the next couple of weeks because we asked for some up front as we're waiting to figure this all out. So,
Yeah, I mean, if you look on their website, I mean, Kansas City area, they've got a bunch of them everywhere. And then other than the Webster folks,
I'd also I also reached out to the Maplewood, and they didn't have any specific, they kind of did it on a trial basis and just allowed it to be placed near the trash dumpsters for those restaurants along Manchester, since it was out of the way and near the, and not visible and near the existing trash dumpsters. They just kind of did it. We just kind of did it as a trial basis. I reached out to a planner I knew in the Kansas City area, and they have provided specific guidelines for clothing bin donations on size requirements. She indicated she'd have to either amend the code or consider how to address the ripple glass because it is much bigger. So I'm kind of getting mixed messages at this.
yeah.
I mean, when I started looking at the ripple glass, before we brought it to sustainability, or once it was on the sustainability agenda, this is obviously, it's something that started in Kansas City, this company in particular, and they're trying to branch out across the Midwest. I'll tell you that I talked to a few people in Kansas City, like Ray Moore, Kansas City, I think even someplace in Johnson County. And they were all very happy. Like, look, it's simple. We don't actually have to do a whole lot with it. They do kind of pack it away where it's not visible in neighborhoods and things like that. But they said that it's been really good for their recycling program. So,
And the argument for it is it actually would reduce the potential cost, our cost of that we have to pay as a city
correct.
For people who throw glass in their just single sort recycle.
Yep.
I mean, I think if we do it and we can try to promote it and get people to go, it's a win for the city and the residents that pay into it, and then, it gets actually recycled. I don't know if you have any comments on that.
No, I mean, I spoke to our Republic rep at the MML meeting, and I asked her about Ripple specifically, and she said it's a great program. She actually came from Kansas City. She was very familiar, and she said that they're sorting stuff. They have to do it. They have to sort for glass, but it doesn't work that well, and it gets gummed up a lot. They can't accept a lot of types of glass that Ripple can, and she said they're actually trying to work with Ripple to figure out better solutions for what they're doing for single stream with Ripple to do this, and she was like, do it if you can. Because that's the heavy stuff we're putting in our recycling. We pay by the pound. So, okay, so it sounds like, do you need a motion on that?
I think we need a motion if how we're going to do it as part of the current code. So if it's going to be a temporary storage, it looks like we would need to have a special use permit approved by the Board of Aldermen. I'll make sure.
If it's being used in the industrial court too?
So the light industrial district does allow for display, storage, and parking of outdoor equipment. So I would think this would be interpreted as being part of that, there I was thinking it would be allowed on a more permanent basis. Anywhere else in the commercial district, it would either be the temporary storage option approved by site plan or doing a text amendment.
Okay, so it sounds like a motion to put it at the new Public Works building wouldn't need anything for right now.
Beyond that, and then I can reach out to Ripple Glass and start the process.
I'll make a motion that we put the Ripple glass container at the new Public Works building and review it on an ongoing basis.
Second that.
All right. Any other comments or discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? All right. All right, federal grants.
So I'm going to take this one. Back to everything. So the city was, SEMA reached out to the city and let us know that there's a new round of, a new flood mitigation assistant grant program coming through, and they're accepting some of those applications. These are very competitive grants. If you have severe repeated loss, it's 100% covered by FEMA. If it's just a repeated loss, it's a 75-25 split, 75 federal, 25 local match. And so we have identified 5 of the severe and 4 of the repeated. And so we're kind of looking into those right now and seeing if any of those properties are desirable for the city. And at this point, obviously, we're still in that phase, but we did complete the letter of interest and sent that back to SEMA just so we had that already checked off our list. If there's something that we feel like is worthwhile, we bring it back to the board, probably at a closed session, obviously, because we're talking about property. So that's kind of where we're at right now.
Okay, and you don't need any kind of motion, just
No,
information?
there's just
only?
information.
Okay. Any other comments, questions? Sounds good. All right, Madden Fest.
All right, so it's the year of, like we always talk about what happened in Brentwood Days last year or this past season and what we do in the future. So as you know, last year we made several operational changes to Brentwood Days. The first were the enhanced security measures. I think those went really well. We didn't have any complaints, and the police were very excited about what they saw. So that was good. We did replace fireworks with the drone show. I only heard positive responses. I did hear or see a few things people have said they missed fireworks, but overall I thought it went really well. And we made carnival rides, we charged for carnival rides, and we had the beer garden that replaced the vendor booth. So what I would say for this year and kind of what we wrote is operationally, I think that the Brentwood Days went really well. I think the lines coming in were handled very well by the police department. We didn't have a whole lot, the fire department didn't have a whole lot to do. They're very happy they didn't have to have 8 pumpers all around the yards and in the neighborhoods. So that went well. The expanded carnival rides, I think, spread out the event, so the lines weren't as compressed or congested as they were in years past. The bad is the attendance wasn't very good in our mind. Obviously, as when we put together an event, we want everyone to come. And so we saw it was probably half of the year before. And we think that the big reasons for that are because we charged for carnival rides and people were a little bit scared from the previous year about what happened. So we did have some people who showed up who were, to be honest, they were non-residents who were upset that they weren't free. Some stayed and bought wristbands, some did not and left. And so that's kind of where the event went. So what I will tell you is that our vendors this year were not very happy. The food vendors were pretty upset. I think it'll be tough getting some of them back. We'll always get the boosters, thank you. I always call them Junior Eagles because that's what they were. We'll always have the boosters, they'll always be there. I think we always will find a beer alcohol vendor because ultimately they understand that they will make some money. In fact, one of them sold out on Friday, so I think they did okay. They were just expecting more people. So it was kind of the other food vendors who were really, I think, disappointed in what happened. In addition, the Carnival Ride Company was not happy at all. As I said, we sold 726 wristbands. That brought us generating $19,000, which was great. The fun fact was we sold 93% of them the week leading up to the event. So Monday through Friday, we sold 93% of them, no matter what we did. So the Carnival Ride only sold 189 wristbands and 662 individual tickets. Their comment was, and I had that conversation with them before, and their comment was, while yes, we had a minimum, we bring out 13 rides and staff for 13 rides, we expect to make more than the minimum. And so depending on what happens, I don't know if they would continue to bring 13 rides out for $40,000. It's just to be blunt. And so we this is really quick, and we'll have more conversation, obviously, but I think if we look at what we did this year, we think we continue to do the enhanced security operations. We did like the drone show, and we think there's room for improvement on that, and we continue with that.
Can I interject on that?
Sure.
The only real, I think, reasonable negative that I heard about the drone show was that they wished there was a better sync or ability to have music along with it. They felt like, you know, we had the band stage sort of playing some music in the background, but it didn't feel connected. So if we continue a drone show, having it be a little bit more production quality with music synced into it would be something that people would like.
And I'll tell you, the music was synced technically. I don't think it was, I think we had a tough time connecting it to the band's stereo equipment, so I don't think we got the volume we would have liked. And so we need to make sure we fix
Yeah,
that
and it's
next year.
behind everybody, so
Yep.
you have a disconnect when you're looking this way, and it's,
But
you know.
the sound system, what we did is very similar to what we've done any year with fireworks.
Right.
The real difference is that they did kind of a kind of a library-esque music, because it seems like they don't have the rights for any songs. So we didn't get songs that you know. Like every year with Brentwood Days with firework, it's like, what is our theme? Okay, it's Disney's this year. Okay, let's play these Disney movies, get it synced up, and that's what they do. And that's what I think was a little bit missing, and I would agree with that. But yes, we can talk to them about that. I think that what you'll see as we get more and more down the line with drone shows is being able to tell stories, and that's where I think that's where they're moving to. So good or bad. I mean, it's still in infancy, but I think it's worthwhile to continue just for the environmental reasons alone. And then the beer garden was this year. We did a real sort of minor, like, let's see what would happen. We like a lot of things about what happened this year. There's other things we would change. Shade's obviously one of them, so we're kind of figure that out. I like the openness of it, so I don't know if I want to put it underneath a tent, but figuring out shade somehow. I do like the idea of having different activities for the adults. It seemed like some really enjoyed it. Seemed like some weren't as popular. I'd love to get pinball games out there. That's my dream. There's lots of things we can do with that. And I also want to move it where it's closer to the stage, so it feels like a part of the stage too, not kind of out on its own. So there's a lot of things we're talking about that. But it seemed to go well. We were already talking about different things we can do. The mixologist went well. We were talking about, I'm going to butcher the word, the sommelier. We could have a sommelier out there too, and lots of things that I think would be interesting for adults more so than just walking around. So the real question is what to do with carnival rides. And I know you guys probably heard a lot about whether we charge next year or not. I will tell you two things. One is that the fee for wristbands was cheaper than any other carnival around the city of St. Louis. We did our research before that. We brought you some of those back to you. I think it's funny because even Mary Magdalene wristband fees are more than what we charged. And that was one of the big comments the Carnival Ride Company has. Like, we would have made our minimum, and you guys would have made money if we would have just charged what we should charge for carnival rides, for wristbands. So I think that's the real question is, if we go any lower, there's really no reason to charge anyway. Beyond maybe we're getting pittance money back to then give to the Carnival Ride Company, which could be an argument. I don't think, like I said, if we don't change anything, we won't be having 13 rides out there. I think that would be a big change. Now, we had 8 in the past. I don't think we honestly needed 13 with our ride size this year, so maybe it's okay. Or maybe we want to keep 13 and we just pay more. That is, I think, the real question for the committee is, what do we want to do with carnival rides, and how I'm going to have to sell it to the company to make sure we keep them, because they've done this carnival for the 20 years that I know that we've had carnival rides, and the past 2-3 RFPs I put out, I've gotten one response. They're the only ones. We sent it, they sent this last one out to 30 different companies. We basically, Carnival Ride St. Louis, I mean, we got we were contacted by 3 people who wanted to know what our revenue was. Like, well, we don't have revenue yet. It's our first year of doing wristbands. Okay, we'll call back in a couple of years. And they're the only ones who came back. So if we lose them, I'm worried we might not find anyone else, to be honest. So that's kind of Brentwood Days in a quick nutshell, and I'm sure there's lots of questions, comments, concerns.
One piece of feedback I got on the drone show, and I hadn't thought about this, is because it was so new to a lot of our residents, they are used to watching the fireworks from up the hill, so they'll come for the day, then they'll go back and then watch from up, and so they were watching it from the side, and it's just a line of, so they're, so I think it's, maybe we need a little
Education.
more communication of like, you got to watch it from like here to get the right views on it, because they couldn't understand why it didn't look the same from all directions. So just hadn't thought about that. I don't know. I also hear there's maybe a conversation about getting like an advisory committee or something of residents together.
Yeah, the mayor did talk about that in Coffee with the Mayor.
Yep.
We'd be happy to have one. Ultimately, I think getting people on it would be the real question. We could also do a survey too. We actually did put a quick survey in board docs. Again, we didn't spend a whole lot of time, but we did kind of come up with the questions we'd ask if we wanted to send out a survey as well. But as far as the advisory committee, I think that would be, if that's something the committee thinks is valuable, we would try to push that out through social media.
I have mixed feelings about it. I agree it might be hard to get, how do you get a good representative sample of the people, and also that's like what they elect us to do sometimes too, right? To pulse people and make decisions. So I'm kind of both ways on that, but I was just curious if there was a conversation about that going on.
The conversation was the mayor announcing it.
There you go.
That's
So,
the only conversation we've had.
a
at this point.
unilateral conversation, got it. I think the survey would be a good idea. I agree it's not statistically accurate and somebody could easily brigade it, but at least let's do our best to answer or find out what our residents want to say about it.
I will also say, sorry, the Carnival Ride Company does want to have a conversation before the end of December because they're lining up their next year's stuff. So if there is a conversation to be had with them, we'll need to have it in the next couple months. I think we have another month. I think I could get them till the end of December. So if we have a November Public Works meeting, if we have a December Public Works meeting, we'd have time to kind of further discussion of what you guys might want to see come back for discussion before if we make any changes, or if you guys are ready to make a decision now, that's a whole other thing too. But yes, we're more than happy to put out the survey. Our thought process was twofold. We're going to send it, we could send it to anyone who purchased a wristband. That's an easy, we have that data captured, and then we could just put it on social media too. If you try taking it, to be honest, we want to make sure that the data we get is real data. So we did say, like if you're a non-resident, if you're a resident, if you put no, we then thank you for taking the survey. Because ultimately, it seems like what we want to hear back is resident feedback. So that's what we wanted to kind of capture. So.
I just, I'll make an observation or a comment. I felt like the success of the Brentwood Days this year was that it truly felt like Brentwood Days community together. The people who did show up. Now, obviously, maybe some of the community, I don't know what the numbers were prior to COVID, before social media starts pushing the region and drawing everybody from everywhere to free rides. But if we go back a couple of years when it was truly a community experience with a few neighboring communities kind of coming to it, I felt like it was, it wasn't overrun by people that we didn't all know who our neighbors were. I thought it was a very good event for Brentwood. I absolutely recognize that part of the complaints that we hear is, oh, we want more vendors, we want more food options, we want all of this. And I've had several conversations even with people that while the event's going on is, Right, but have you bought food at every one of these, and have you bought, you know, because if you don't, they don't show up. They're not gonna come because you want them. You know, they're gonna come because people, you know, buys things from them. So I think that's part of also the community engagement and making sure people know, hey, if we get booths, then treat them well. So I just felt like that needs to be said. I think you guys, with what you had, we made some huge changes to address a longstanding concerns and feedback we've been receiving. I think a lot of it was successful.
I will tell you, in my time here, I think our attendance was pretty consistent 2013 to about 2018. Ultimately, we did have a lot of non-residents. They're more generalized, Maplewood, Webster Groves, Rock Hill, Clayton, who kind of knew word of mouth about the event. We didn't do anything different, to be completely honest, in any of our marketing in last year. I think the difference is a lot more people recognize and have been following Brentwood because of Brentwood Park. So all those people that we reached out to Brentwood Park then started looking at all of our other stuff and then picked up on the fact that, wow, you can come here and have free carnival rides. I think that's what led to the increase, the glut of last year. And that's great. I mean, it's good and bad, don't get me wrong, both ways. I think the hard thing for staff, and when we talk about it, because it is a community event, so right now the committee that we have is police, fire, public works. I mean, it is a staff, the entire city works on this event. And the conversation is, okay, we had 5,000 people and we paid $90,000.
Right.
And we talk, I mean,
It's a lot.
going back to the $11,000 for a parking space, it's
Right.
a very similar conversation. How do you even it out? And I don't have a great answer for that.
I agree.
It is ultimately, ultimately we're happy to do whatever. We've talked about this multiple years. What can we do to make it better, expand it, things like that. We internally, for Parks and Recreation Department, we take care of entertainment. And we're trying to figure out if there's a way to incorporate the park prior to. The run was a good start. I think the run is a wonderful kind of incorporation of something else throughout the week. Can we do something on a Thursday night leading up to Brentwood Days? Can we do some of those type of other things that, while it's not carnival rides or something else, brings a more community engaged event? We're very early into those conversations, don't get me wrong, and part of it has to do with what Friday and Saturday look like too, so.
Yeah, and as far as resident advisory board, I don't have any issue with that. If there are people who would like to contribute to this, I think the more transparency they have to the decisions that need to be made and the limitations and the issues that have to be overcome to even put an event together like this, I think the more that they're involved, the better they have a clear understanding and the more they can kind of communicate to other residents. Ultimately, doesn't matter if the advisory board wants to do certain things, it still comes to the boards, committees and boards for a final decision. It's not like they're gonna just make all these choices. So I don't have any issue with trying to get community engaged and having a couple of advisory meetings leading up to it. It sounds like, though, you need a fairly clear decision in the next month or two,
Specifically related to carnival rides.
the carnival rides.
What is it that we want to do? Do we want to continue with what we did this year? And then I'm working with the carnival ride company on what that looks like. Is it go back to free or do what we've heard, free for residents, make non-residents paid, which ultimately they won't sell many. So then it is almost basically we're paying kind of like we did in the past. Or do we open it up for everyone again and go for it? So I think those are the big questions. Or do we sell non-resident wristbands ahead of time? Again, that would have to be a conversation with the carnival ride company, because again, they feel like our dollar price was too low, which hurt their bottom line.
Psychologically, I think there were a lot of changes this year for our residents, and so I think that's probably part of the root of this. I thought the the wristband prices were very reasonable. You know, I looked at that data, and you looked at all the surrounding areas. I mean, it's still a great deal, and I really like how the school was able to find a way for some of their population to come, so it wasn't a barrier. I mean, I don't know how you would do it where like Brentwood residents are free and non-residents aren't, because you have your cousins that are coming to visit or your grandkids that don't live in town. What do you do then? You know, and like, it just seems like logistically impossible. And I've always thought that this is kind of a way, our town is funded by sales tax from the region. This is kind of like a gift back to the region in some respects. So I always thought it was great that we were inviting non-Brentwood people in for this to Brentwood. I think if we went back to free for everybody, then it's just going to go back to, you know, the chaos of last year.
So on the pay thing, we've jumped through that, and we made it through the first year of charging, and it turned it back into a more Brentwood event, as Alderman Gould said. And I think we've done that, and we need to keep that there, because this is a great deal. If you have little kids and you're not going to do a whole wristband worth of things, you can go and take your little kids and ride 2 rides and leave. So it was still a great community event. I do think the people I heard who had kids who went loved it, because their kids got to, like, they got off and they got back on, and it was great. Got to say, yeah. And then I've talked to several people who didn't go because of what had happened last year. And I said, well, we charged, and it felt like Brentwood crowd again. And like, oh, well, if that's the case, I want to go back. I'll go back next year. So I think those changes were great for the people who went. I think it's a balance of how to get more residents to know, like, adults, you can still come, and it's free, and you can get dinner from the boosters and hang out in this, free area and play foosball or whatever. And so I think there's value in that. I think the survey is a great idea, and I think if there's a way to pull a committee that's with residents who were somewhat reasonable and not just like, oh, no, like my only reason to be on this committee is because you need 15 carnival rides and make it free for Brentwood residents, as long as we don't have those, as long as we're able to get residents who appreciate the constraints that you're under, and we can do it like in the next few weeks. I'm fine with that, and if we can't, then, well, it's our job to communicate out to the residents why we couldn't.
Yeah, maybe like maybe a compromise on the advisory board is like, when we know that we're going to be talking about the logistics of this at Public Works or the board, advertise that a little bit more. If we have all the emails of people over us, this is when we're making decisions about Brentwood Days at this meeting.
That's a great idea.
So people can see why we're making the decisions that we are with the data that we're making them with. And, even if you have to go open, workshop or whatever, a little bit more to
Great
get
idea.
people's input. So it's a little of both,
Yeah.
right?
I like
Let
that.
people understand why we did this.
And I thought I did the survey. I thought it was good.
Doing the survey right now, so.
So it sounds like we have 2 people who are thinking you keep the wristbands with a reduced rate for Brentwood, and kind of the same thing we did last year. I don't know, what do you?
This year.
I think there's going to be negative feedback no matter what we do every year. It seems like this year there was a lot less negative feedback than last year. So I think we keep honing it, and I'm supportive of keeping the wristbands, but maybe revisiting the cost of them.
So what we can do by the next meeting is we can get the survey out fairly quickly. We'll take it one more time, just to make sure that we didn't miss up anything. We're trying to make sure we keep it short, but we at one point had a question about, would you like to be involved in a committee? We could put that back in there, at least get names of people who might be interested. And then we can get that out in the next week or 2. I can have those results come back by the next Public Works meeting, and then I can have an honest conversation with the Carnival Company and say, hey, if this is what we want to do each year, what does that mean for you guys? And if we want to keep it 40,000, my guess is going to be less rides. And then if we want to keep it 13, what would that cost be? And then we can have that conversation next month as well. Or whenever our next meeting is.
Right, probably next month, I bet.
I was gonna say, if it's in 2 weeks,
Right.
I know they're in Italy, so I might not be able to get a hold of them for a couple weeks.
Wow.
Okay, so
All right?
you got what you need from us?
I have marching orders, or at least for now, and we'll have more conversation next month.
Okay.
Great.
Alrighty, I think that brings us to citizen comment.
Online.
All right, seeing no new business, this meeting is adjourned. Thanks, everybody.